Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion titled Informal Housing in Delhi, Policies and Case Studies. I'm Kirsten Hamann. I serve as the Interim Director of the India Center at the University of Central Florida, and I'm also Pegasus Professor in the School of Politics, Security, and International Affairs and Associate Dean in the College of Sciences. It is an honor to welcome our speaker, Dr. Ruchita Gupta, to our India Center event today. The India Center at UCF broadens the understanding and awareness of contemporary India. It promotes the study of India in the world today and the relationship between the United States and India through partnerships, scholarship and research, education, and outreach. Today's discussion addresses a timely and important topic. As I'm sure you're aware of, India has recently surpassed China as the most populous country globally. Today's discussion will focus on the impact of India's population growth and increase in urban migration on the shortage of affordable housing. Welcome again. Thank you for joining us today. And it is now my pleasure to turn it over to Laila Chakku, the Director of Public Affairs of the India Center, who will introduce our speaker, Dr. Ruchita Gupta. I hope you will enjoy the discussion.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure for me to introduce our esteemed guest today. Professor Sawhney is a professor of architecture, building construction, and interior design at Miami-Dade College, where he has taught for the last 50 years. He's involved with helping underserved communities in cities through the Global Urban Sustainable Center. Our speaker today is Dr. Ruchita Gupta. Dr. Gupta is an associate professor of housing in the School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi, where she is head of department. She has done extensive research in the area of low-income housing in urban India. Dr. Gupta holds a Ph.D. from IIT Roorkee and a master's degree in planning. Today, Dr. Gupta will present several case studies on informal settlements in Delhi to provide a glimpse of the living conditions of the urban questions following the presentation and the moderated Q&A and the moderated discussion. So please utilize the Q&A function on the bottom of the screen for your questions. Now I'll hand it over to Dr. Gupta to start our discussion on informal housing in Delhi, policies and case studies.
Thank you, UCF, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I'll just share my screen. I hope it's visible. I'll start. Okay. Okay, so today's talk on informal housing in Delhi and government policies for slums. Just to go a little basic to housing, what housing is all about. So housing is not only shelter or household, housing is not only shelter or household facilities, but above that it comprises a number of facilities and utilities which link the individual and family to community and community to region. So housing, like housing is not just sheer four walls and a roof. Housing, to be complete, it must have access to the basic things that sustain life. And this was very clearly comes from the Maslow's theory of hierarchy of human needs. So the basic thing what one needs in their life is a house where you have met your physiological needs of safety, basic needs of food, clothing, and then comes your safety needs. And once you have achieved that you can grow in the ladder, in the pyramid, and can go till self-actualization. So housing actually plays a very big role in anybody's life. So, and it is not just, again, I'll repeat, it is not just a house, but along with that, a set of facilities which is required to have a complete life and to reach self-actualization. So if I go little explain that when I say about housing, what one can afford is depending upon the housing provisions in an urban area based on the affordability for housing. So affordability, how we calculate as a thumb rule is like 30% of anybody's monthly income and 5 times of the annual income. So based on the affordability, what one can have is an ownership housing in a planned area, or if they can't afford an ownership house, like an own house, they can go for a rental in a planned area. But suppose the affordability of the household doesn't suits with the ownership or on a rent in a planned area, one will go in an unplanned area, which is mostly built by the people themselves. And they are majorly in India's context, we call them squatters, where one encroach on somebody else's land and make juggies and small hutments for their own self, or unauthorized colonies. I'll be explaining this in detail, unauthorized colonies, where the majority of time it's like almost 90% are houses and only very little goes into the facilities or amenities or the access roads. So these are the two unplanned. I will elaborate more on planned and unplanned gradually. So if we see the statistics, especially in Asia, if we see 30% of the Asia's urban population is not part of the planned housing. Now, just to explain what is this planned housing. So there are two approaches to how we make housing estates. So when I am been mentioning planned, what does this plan means? In this, there's a planning that you make a layout, and there is a subdivision in terms of residential, commercial, little bit of facilities, amenities. And then you give the infrastructure in terms of physical infrastructure, roads, water, sewerage, drainage, and then buildings are made, housing is made. And once all this is in place, as per the planning standards, people come and occupy it. So it's planned, and there's a subdivision, infra comes into picture, building is made, and then people occupy it. So this is a planned approach, and there are planning standards and development controls to support this and as per the land use. Unlike in unplanned, where you don't go by the method, there's a raw land, maybe agriculture land, and people, based on their affordability, just buy the unplanned land and subdivide as per their convenience of all sizes, and they come and occupy it, start living there, and gradually consolidate by making buildings. And over time, when there is a consolidation of lot of population and houses, then they ask the government for some infrastructure. Initially, it's all private, then gradually government pitch in, as they are the vote banks also, for infrastructure, which gradually water will come, then sewers, and at times little bit roads, not always. So it's based on how much people, how many people are staying there, and there is no planning per se. So it's like very cheap because it's a raw land, no investment in terms of services, facilities. Over and up, like with time, it grows. So somewhere the all our cities, it's been divided into planned and unplanned. So if we go that how this planning is being done, so we have master plan in place, and where there is a chapter on planning standards. So it's been said like for 5,000 population, you need to have a certain set of facilities. So there is almost, if we calculate for 5,000 population, almost 2.5 square meter comes per person area for the facilities, and for a 10,000 population, another 5 square meter. So it adds on to almost 7 square meter per person. That is a minimum area which goes into total, into green spaces, into some social infrastructure in terms of schools, in terms of banquet hall or other facilities, hospital, health facilities. So when it's been calculated that when we design a layout for a 10,000 population on a 20-hectare land, almost 10 hectare goes for facilities and amenities, and 10-hectare land for net housing, that is for making the housing superstructures for house. That is 50% area goes into facilities. Unlike in unplanned area, where 90% goes for net housing and only 10% goes for access road to the houses. So where you have very poor quality of living because you don't have open green spaces, you don't have education facilities, you don't have community facilities in terms of banquet, no commercial. So over time, commercial comes as per the market demand. So somewhere we lack the facilities and so unplanned. So if you see Delhi's case, and this is as per the master plan, we have almost like 23.7% of the population lives in a planned area, and the rest 76% lived in unplanned settlements, which I mentioned like Juggi Jhopdi, squatter settlements, or unauthorized colonies, where the per square meter area for the facilities and amenities is very less. It's almost like 100, almost 90% goes for housing and nothing for the amenities as per this initial table of planning standards. And those who cannot afford the planned areas or unplanned areas of Juggi Jhopdi and unauthorized colonies, they become homeless people. So the very few area is planned because it's a huge investment. Almost 50% of the area goes into amenities and facilities as per the planning standards. Now, these unplanned areas, which I've been mentioning as unauthorized colonies or squatter settlements, these unplanned areas do not follow master plan. We have a document which tells how the planning for next 20 years is going to happen. So there is a vision document along with a land use plan. So that we call as master plan. So these unplanned areas do not follow master plan, neither they follow planning standards. No development controls. Development control regulation means how much should be the density, how much should be the built up area, what should be the setbacks, parking standards, height, how much high we should go. All these are development control regulations. These are not followed, and neither the building bylaws. As a result, poor quality housing. So if you see these photographs, these are the photographs of unplanned areas. These settlements lack open spaces for recreational purposes because the green is almost nil. Lack of social infrastructure in terms of community centers, schools, medical facilities, they are not there. Lack of security of tenure, constant threat of eviction, because at times when Juggi Jhopdi, squatter settlements, people have actually encroached. So there is always threat that we can be evicted any point of time by the government. So there is that security is not there. Then lack of light and ventilation in the houses, and high congestion rate in the houses. So area per person inside the house is also very less. So if we see the unplanned housing in Delhi, almost 1,797 are unauthorized colonies, 135 urban villages, and 675 JJ clusters. And they are actually spread all across like north, south, east, west in all directions. So we'll see that whenever there is a planned area, there are unplanned areas also, because people get jobs there. And so they try to be near the planned areas because they are the rich people, and for a rich you always need poor people to for your help, for other drivers, cooks, other facilities. So always they try to be near the planned areas. So if we see the housing typology available in these unplanned housing are like a floor space, uh, people get on rent from rupees 300 to 500 per month. So this is just for a mat on the floor. Then suppose they get a bed, the rent per month increases from 800 to 1200 rupees. If there's a one room with shared toilet, the facilities of wet areas are shared, then it's 1500 to 2000, it increases. And if one room with the own toilet, it's a luxury for the poor to have their own toilets in the unplanned areas. So it comes to 2000 to 3000 per month. But two rooms with a toilet and a kitchen. So generally the kitchen is part of the room only in these unplanned areas. But if you have a separate kitchen, then the rent really increases, goes high. So all this rent is based on where the location is, what is the size, and the kind of facilities that are there in the. So giving you example as a case study, we were doing one the project of Sangam Vyad. This is one of the biggest unauthorized colony in city of Delhi, almost 10 lakh population. And because it's unplanned, in terms of, if I repeat, unplanned, where you don't give open spaces, social infrastructure, physical infrastructure as per the planning standards. And you just cut the raw land and the people take as in per their affordability. So if somebody wants 25 square meter, they just buy that. If somebody wants 100 as per their affordability, they buy. And the landowner of this raw land, maybe agricultural land, he doesn't give any set of facilities. So it's 90% it's housing. So just see, such a huge amount of people living there are two access roads to this whole settlement. So in the morning and evening, it's very difficult to get out of the settlement or get inside. That is a situation, and majority of time in most of the unauthorized colonies, this is a situation because there is no hierarchy of road set networking. So there is no main road and then going to the next level. So it's just two and then very narrow alleys. Then again, only two narrow entrances. So again, when it rains little bit, because there's no proper drainage, so then it floods. For a 10 minutes rain, it floods, and then there's a problem to the people. Another set, like over time, the people continuously make um, roads, road without taking out the first layer. And so subsequently what happens, the ground floor over time becomes the basement, and when it rains, it floods which is a basement now. So that is the problem. And because there's no one to actually go properly, because it's unplanned, unauthorized, so the government has also closed their eyes to that. And then there are high tension lines. People don't adhere to the distance from the high tension lines. No best construction practices are followed. No proper light and ventilation. So people make the houses as per what there's no plan approved in unplanned areas. So if we go to this squatter settlement, which is, I said, Jhuggi Chopris, it is an encroachment along the unnoticed areas, like along the drain, a garbage dump, and there the squatters will come. So, and over time, the people consolidate these houses, make it increasingly difficult for the concerned authorities to remove these settlements. And they lack security of tenure. So these are the JJ clusters, and there's no claim. They've actually encroached on a public land, which can be of the development authority or railway or any other agency. This is an example of one of the JJ clusters, Sanjay Amar Colony. So here this is the particular cluster. And if I go into the detail, over time, there is a government scheme of EIUS, Environmental Improvement of Urban Slums. It's a very old scheme of 1972. Here, what they do till the time these people are relocated or in situ redevelopment has been done, some upgradation in the existing housing in the slum area is being done so that some kind of quality is given to them. So there are Anganwadis are run by the NGOs, some kind of road brick road has been laid, some infrastructure, then community taps for maybe 50 jhuggis houses, they will put one tap. So this is what government do till the time they are relocated or some good solution for housing is made for these people for the JJ clusters. So generally the houses are very congested. So number of family members, 6, area of the jhuggi just 9.6 square meters. And so area per person comes to 1.6. And as in standard, we take 5 square meter per person. So it's very congested, no private space and very people live in a congestion. So that is within the house also congestion, and outside definitely no green spaces, nothing. So that way it's a bad quality of living. So in another example, these are few of the dwelling units that we have surveyed during our research. So the government interventions for these JJ clusters. So relocation or resettlement from 1962 to 77 was a major move by the government of Delhi. And there they have actually resettled 47, they have made actually 47 resettlement colonies. And they were across Delhi, and 25 square yard area was given. Majority area was of this 25 square yard. And they have given in such a manner, the layout was made with giving primary school open spaces as per the planning standard. This layout was made where the land was given of 25 square yard. And they were on the periphery. People were reluctant to move. 50% moved, 50% didn't. They went back to their original squatters. because they were far off places. They don't wanted to miss on their livelihood. And so they went back, but few went. And now over time, they have become the low income housing hubs in the city, because over time, the boundaries of the city has increased. And now they are within very much part of the city and proper connectivity, which that point of time in 60s, it was not there. But now they are quite close within the city boundaries. And so it's working well, and they have become the hubs. So it took few decades, but now they are main areas. But what, like, they were supposed, they actually 6 meter road was given, but over time people have encroached in front of the houses. And because open toilets were community toilets made, over time people have made their own toilets within the house, and this lane has now been reduced to say 1.5 or 2 meters. And this is a situation. So they were supposed to have just ground plus one structures, and over time people had made G plus 3 because their family size increased and there was more demand in the house, within the house. And now they are like fully habited. So this is how it is now. Then in 1990, another scheme came where almost 35 schemes came up, where the government has given 18 square meter and 12.5 square meter as a plot size based on the eligibility of the people. If it was prior to 1990, bigger plot was given of 18 square meter, and those who came after that, 12.5 square meter area was given. For why 12.5? That if people will make G plus 1, it will be 25 square meter uh, plot, like built up area. And that was keeping in mind because presently they are living in like 10 square meter, and also it was so small. So gradually they will be in 25 square meter, but they were again on the peripheries of the city. And giving you example, like right now these colonies of relocation uh, are on the periphery. Balaswa, Narela, they are almost on the periphery, and from the city center, the red dots are the slums from where the people have been shifted in these relocation colonies, which are almost like 30-35 kilometers away from where they are presently. So in a way, their livelihood is disturbed. But because plots were given of 18 and 12.5, people were okay to move in those plots. Uh, So this is like when they get shifted, the drive goes very fast because then otherwise people will not shift. So it's like all their things are put in the truck and they're being shifted. And what presently, like they at times they're in the hutments, but only thing is that the layout. If sorry, I'll just go to the next slide. Yeah. So if you see this layout, so this is well planned. They have open greens. As this is as per the standard, the layout is being made as per whatever the norms. So all the greens, all the commercial, all the PSP, public, semi-public, everything is in place. So though the superstructure is not made, hoping that it's like kind of a site and services scheme. The site is there along with the services, and people with time will consolidate and make their superstructures and as per their affordability. But the plot is given to them, a serviced plot is given to them. So this is like 18 square meter. The people have made this kind of dwelling units. And for 12.5 square meter, they have made one shop area. They, because it's a plot, so they have made a shop area here. They're living, the drawing room and all. So that is the way they have been. So we have surveyed these, one of the resettlement colonies of Savda Gevra in the west of Delhi. And these are the structures made by the people. Yeah, sorry. So major problems with these resettlement colonies are they're located at the periphery of the city, lack of employment nearby, lack of adequate transportation, lack of schools and other social infra. Because in the first go, the site is there for the social infra, but it takes time to come up. But now in 10 years, things will social infra, but at least the land is there. It's a proper layout being made. And over time, in 2005, we had another scheme of government, JNURM, Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. Under that, BSUP, Basic Services for the Urban Poor, was there. And in that, they, if you see these, this site, this they have made as G plus 3 structures, built up apartments. Instead of the plots, the built up apartments were given. So in this JNURM, what I was mentioning, the built up apartments were given. 7,000 multi-storied flats were made of 25 square meters in carpet area. And this is how they are made. Initially, the plots were given of 18.5 and 18 square meter and 12.5. Now the plots, now the apartments, the flats of 25 square meter being given. But majority of people didn't shifted. Why? Because on a plot, they see that over time they can make more floors, and as a family expand, they can have more area to live in, and they can have a shop on the ground floor and some other. So they were good with that. But with an apartment, 25 square meter, although their household size is so big, so they feel like sitting on a fourth floor, they can't do what they like. They see house as an asset in terms of money making also. It's an home-based enterprise. But if you give them just a house for the urban poor, it doesn't work. So majority of the apartments are lying vacant, unlike the plots where people have occupied and are residing also. Now, very recently, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana has come up. There, it's a latest government mission program for housing for all, and it has 4 verticals. And in this, the first vertical is in situ slum redevelopment. Because the livelihood of the people get disturbed when you shift them to the periphery, so the government says if it's a tenable slum, do it in situ slum redevelopment. So that is in a big way. So how they are looking at using land as a resource with private participation, giving extra FSI, TDR, FAR if required to make project financially viable. And the approach aims at leverage the locked potential of the land under slums. Now, how they are seeing it? This is suppose the existing slum. They on the same land they will make housing for the slum dwellers who are residing here, and another set of housing for to sell in an open market. So in a way, because it's in the city center, they are cross subsidizing by making high-end housing, and so that the private developer can make these houses for the slum dwellers free of cost. That is what is the ongoing government project. In Mumbai, where the land is actually a problem, it is working really well. Like there is a separate scheme of state under SRA, and there it's working well. But in majority of other parts of the country, it is not, because somewhere for the developer, it's not that it doesn't work as a financial model because land is not that expensive. So it's still thought is going how to make it better. So transit accommodation is being provided till the time this kind of structures for the private and for the slum dwellers is being made. They are put on a transit accommodation. But when we spoken to people that are you good with living on G plus 13 or 14 floor, many said no, not actually, because they have their own livestock, animals. Few have opened their shops. Senior citizens are more comfortable with the ground floors, and many have cards because they're hawkers. Their occupation is such that they have a rickshaw or something as a labor. So they actually feel that going in high rise is not their cup of tea. They want to be with the ground, because then they can spill over. Their lifestyle is such that they spill over, and they can have from the house many more other things. So that is so the issue. There were many issues when we spoken to them, and they were not so happy with this high rise phenomena also. So I'll just skip because time is short. So giving you another example of this Sanjay Nagar slum redevelopment project. Very recently, because I'm teaching at SPA and we take our students to various part of the city as we do our studios there. So last year we went actually to one of the city in Maharashtra called Ahmednagar, and there we saw that there was a slum, and because with under PMAY first vertical, actually it was with the help of the NGOs and some and design collaborative Hunar Shala and Snehalaya, few NGOs working. They didn't give it to private, they involved the community, and they have taken the fund under PMAY, and they involved the community for making this housing clusters. And the community, the thermocol was given, and they were asked how you want to design it, and the community was involved in every decision making. And then G+2 structure has been made for the people, and people were involved in making it, and somehow they are very happy. And age group 18 plus were also eligible in a family if they have a son of more than 18 years, he can apply for another house. They have accommodated that also in this, and they have used many features of rainwater harvesting and making it green. And people, in fact, the door color of the door, everything was actually people were involved in making it. So they have that ownership that look, we did it, neither any developer for them. So in a way, in situ project, but with the community participation, though the subsidy from the government was huge, but post COVID, actually the prices have increased. So now they are having a problem with the cost of the flat, which has now increased to from 6 lakhs to 10 lakhs. So that is the problem presently they are facing. But otherwise, this project seems to be a good example of in situ redevelopment where the occupation is not disturbed at all. They are where they are. And at the same time, it's not high rise, but they involved and they designed their houses, so it will good with them. So I thought I'll share this particular example with you. There are many more other best practices for the slum projects. So maybe some other time we can share that. So that it is what. So I will stop here. Thank you. And I'll stop sharing also.
So, good morning. My
Close.
name is Professor Amar Sawhney. I teach at Miami-Dade College over the years. And now my role will be to take the questions from the audience and then also ask some questions of my own. First of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Gupta, for making such a timely presentation, because what's happening in India and the US, we have issues in terms of housing in a different way. You know, it's a human dilemma. Like we have homeless, and also Native Indians don't have a proper housing in the US. Just like in India, we have problems in terms of settlements and things like that. So my first question will be, since most of these people come to Delhi, they're migrant workers. They are in search of the employment. So how's the rural settlements are different from the urban settlements when they come to Delhi in terms of zoning, open spaces, employment? Can you give us some perspective on that so we know what you showed us, where they're coming from and why they're leaving from
Where
rural
they are
to urban?
living.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, there are few mega cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, now Bangalore and Hyderabad also. The adjoining areas which are not that developed. Like, if I give you example of Delhi, the adjoining states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and so from there the people are coming. So what happens? There are joint families in the villages, almost like 4 to 5 children. So four are working, still working in the agriculture sector and doing farming and all. So one or two child comes to the city because in search of employment and the liquid money. So they feel that in village in 6 months when there will be a harvest season and all, they will have the money. But here everyday basis they can earn. If they are a construction worker, at the end of the day they'll get 500 rupees. If they are a hawker, at the end they'll get some money. So they find it lucrative enough to have that liquid money in their hand and to remunerate back in the village. So they send back some amount in the village in their family. They don't cut the ties from the village. They are very much connected to the village. It's just that one or two child come here, and then over time when they get little established with whatever housing in the unplanned areas, they call their families also, the wife and the children. But still the main house is back in the village. So they are there. The connection is very much there. So when COVID happened, they went back. And so the government thought of having ARSCs, affordable rental housing complexes, to retain back these people because they are the working, they're the service sector to the society. So that was another intervention which I didn't mention because of the shortage of time, but that was a fifth vertical of PMAY, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. I have a question from the audience. You mentioned, this is from Helene, you mentioned different levels of rents, space, bed, etc. Who are these rents paid to? Are they paid to local developers or local, lords? They might be controlling that. So I think the question Helene is asking that
Yeah.
is, who are the?
That's a good, so
Mhm.
it's my mistake. Actually, I did make that continuity. So there are unplanned settlements and they are the housing by the people themselves. So they put a part of their house on rent. So they are like individual families. They've constructed the house in an unplanned area, in unauthorized colony. In fact, in Juggies also, where the encroachment is being done, they put a part of their house on rent. So the individual families putting a part of their house on rent. So they are like to have another source of income, because the people in an unplanned areas, those who are putting on rent their part of their house, are also poor people. So
I see.
they look that as an income. So as per the affordability of the tenant who they're giving on rent, they just give a floor space, a mat space, or a bed. So it's like one to one. It's nothing that third system is there. No, no developer, nothing. It's like very individual. My house, I am giving on rent. That
Sounds
is
good.
how it is.
Thank you so much. I have a follow-up question that I was thinking before. Does the government of India or state government of Delhi has developed any kind of plans to provide employment or training or housing to close to their work? Because one of the issue is that they are looking for the employment when they come as a migrant workers in the earlier question that you were answering, and then they have to look for housing. So are there programs where some of these unskilled or skilled people might be coming, they might be carpenter or whatnot. Is the government has some sort of, organized program on federal or
Yeah.
state?
Yeah. So there are programs like we have National Urban Livelihood Mission, NULM. National Urban Livelihood Mission is a present ongoing government policy for employment and for skill upgradation. And there are other, from time to time, since independence, we are having these kind of policies. Government is investing, but the only problem is coverage, where
Mhm.
there's so many people, and this coverage of the scheme at times is not that much, so very few get benefited out of it. But there are very much many schemes in government, lot of investing for their skill upgradation, giving them small loans for startups. So if they want to start their own setup, so there is an amount. There is like to run the night shelters, there is an amount for the maintenance. So government is doing that for their livelihood, for their skill upgradation, for their small business, and in fact they're giving to women also. So in a way government is doing that, but what I feel is that coverage is small, so few people get benefited, though the beneficiaries are so many. So we need to increase that. Otherwise there are programs. Yeah.
Thank you. So I have another question from Anne. Do people have ownership of the units in colonies where they were relocated from the 60s and 70s or 90s? Do they have some preference, or do they have some sort of process where they can take over the ownership because they were living in those settlements in 60s and 70s?
Okay. Oh, sorry. So
Did you get the question?
yeah, I
Okay,
got it. There was some, yeah.
that's okay.
So, yeah. So initially when they were shifted, they were on license. They were supposed to give kind of a rent to government. And there was a lock-in period that they cannot sell for few years. And it was a license. But when over time, few decades, like I think last 10 years, the government has opened it to change that into freehold. Now, if somebody wants to own that, they can give some amount is there, which is very nominal, and then they can get it converted into a freehold, and then they can own the house. But
I see.
initially, yes, they have not given. It was on license. It for like very nominal of say 10 rupees or something very, very less. And but there was a lock-in period. You cannot sell and go away to anybody. But because it was on license. It was not their ownership. But now government has opened for freehold very recently.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Another question, where do urban poor children go to schools? Close to settlement or far away or inside the settlement? Do they have teachers and how does that really work? Are they focused on learning English? Because I had some experience where I saw something where people were, some of these settlement children, they were trying to be up to speed in today's world, in a global world. So do you have any comments on that? See how the education process is working for these settlers in those
Yeah.
areas?
Yeah. So definitely I've not seen the resettlement colonies because 60s, I've just heard the stories, but the relocation, which is a recent phenomena going in, we have been working very closely with Savda Gevra, one of the relocation colonies, where 18 square meter and 12.5 square meter houses, plots are given. So there, when we were surveying the how schools were not built yet, but
Mhm.
there was land given. But some private people have started kind of how schooling in their own houses, which was like kind of an informal. But there are land, and now what I've heard that now schools are opened. So it takes time because by the time people settle, they don't have that. But land was there, but it takes time. But almost 10 years for the school to come up. Now they have the school facilities with them. And yes, English is one of the subject, but majorly it's a Hindi medium schools
I
majority
see.
of time.
Okay, so they focus, India has 28 languages, so I'm
Hmm.
sure they focus on the local ones. So I have
Hmm.
another question. How does the multi-level governance levels of Delhi impact the planning of the city development? Which is the same problem we have in the US, how the federal and the state kind of coordinate together.
Yeah.
So how does that impact in terms of overall development? The
Yeah,
master plan
like
that you were talking.
it has an impact. Like if we say Delhi DDA, the Development Authority, it's with the central government, and so the land is with them. And the running thing is by the Delhi government, which is a state level and government. So if the same government on both sides or in the center and state, then it works well. But if they're different, then there are always conflicts. So it happens that it makes a difference because like the eligibility for the slum dwellers who will be housed um, in the resettlement is decided by the state government.
Mhm.
And the relocation colony per se is being made by the land is of the DDA, the Development Authority, which is a central government. So there are conflicts, but at times it takes time, but it happens when there's a will. Yeah.
So as you may know, in US, we have homeless problems also in major
Mm.
metropolitan cities, especially in the cold climate. What lessons we can take to shelter these poor and homeless issues they're facing in our country here in the US, especially poverty rate has gone down in India from 55% to 16%. That's quite a progress. So some of these settlement might be helping marginally in some way. And US, our poverty rate is 11.7%. So how do you think in terms of what's happening in the US and what's happening in India with sort of resilience and all these kinds of things, the government has policies, whereas in US, the politically and also business people, they're not focused on solving some of these problems that India is solving. So you might have comment on that, see why is that? And what lessons we can learn from India, what they have been doing for the last 75 years.
So per se for homeless, there is not much, but central government has a scheme of providing night shelters for the homeless people. So these in Hindi we say Ren Basera. So this was like from evening it was open for the homeless people till the morning. But very recently they've opened for 24 hours. And initially it was just for the male population, now for the families and the females also. So night shelters are there. But in a way, it's just to being the weather, the climate we have, it's like 8 months summers. So people at times, because I very closely work with the homeless people, because my PhD was on that, homeless people. So they tend to sleep outside because the climate supports it. They feel quite inside the night shelter. They feel that it's claustrophobic. So many people in, so that way, because the designs are not that conducive and all. But over time, government has invested and been thinking how to improve them. But the main advantage with India is that 8 months we are summers, and so we like just 3 months winters, which actually they are inside the night shelter. Otherwise, they are outside. They feel better outside. So that is an advantage. And yeah, government has been investing as a night shelter is a big thing that been done across India now. And under NULM, I was saying they are giving money for the maintenance of these night shelters. Um,
Right.
I
So
think
is,
I'm not, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, is the government has a strong policy in terms of protecting the so-called settlements? You know, are they very liberal versus in the US where we're very touchy about that, you know, especially the business people don't want to, we have this attitude of NIMBY, not in my backyard sort of thing.
Mm.
And they're not focused, both the political parties, and India has different political parties. Are they focused on the federal government to solve these problems? In other words, do they have resilience to think about the poor? Because poverty rate from 55 to 16% in the US, we have a poverty rate of 11%. So we have issue with the Native Indians and some of the poor people. So I'm just thinking, is there policy that government of India in terms of settlement make? I know that federal Indian policy is very strong, and maybe US can take a lesson from that. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, night shelter policy is there, but again, I'll say the coverage is less because we have so many people that whatever intervention, it seems to be less, though government is trying really hard. And with the homeless people in our country, it's very location specific.
Mhm.
So they are near the work centers, so railway stations, near religious places. So they are not seen across the cities. They
Mhm.
are very specific to the location, and that too majorly around the old city areas. So, and they are at times hidden also, not so visible. So government have schemes, but it's very strong. I'll not say that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I have another question. Is the government trying to replicate the final example you showed with including the residents with a new home building and asking their interest with design? This is from an anonymous attendee.
I hope it happens, but chances are less because we see that as an economic model, and we think if we cross subsidize with the rich, and so government doesn't have to put money, and people are poor and so poor that they don't have that money to invest. So then government has to put, or NGO, how much an NGO can invest. So it's a good model, but I am really have reservation how much many more such projects will come because government see as a kind of with a PPP model, public private partnership, where the private developer comes make housing for to sell in an open market and cross subsidize for the poor. And that, if that happens, then they are put in the towers very high, which is what is happening in majority of cases. So it's like kind of in own self one of the examples, not much. I look forward it happens and people were happy there. I personally interacted with them, but I don't think much will pick up because the money is an issue then. Government has a limited subsidy to give.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I have a question from Christine. They're all kind of math questions. What her main question is that some of the prices that you're quoting, she thinks that it's a lot of money for the Indian poor. So the question is, how do they get the financing or the mortgage program? I know India has mortgage program. That's not the case, but how do some of these poor finance these, the housing cost when they get the opportunity? Or the NGO helps them, or the private foundations helps them? How does it work?
No, so it's very informal way. They take from their relatives, from their friends. And at times there are informal setups in which it's a very high rate of interest. So if they take, say, it's like 25-30% rate of interest. So if they take some amount, 3 times they have to pay as interest. So it's very informal, and they at times get cheated because there's no formal setup for financial setup for these people. And so very few times it happens that the formal setup microfinance companies are there, uh, but that is very less. So these people arrange on their own funds from their friends, relatives. They at times sell their land in their villages and then bring that money to have the house here. So it's very informal setup, not much on financial
I
aspect. Yeah.
see. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I have another question for Vihan, and I will summarize it relating to the US, because what he's asking is that all these high-rise building coming in India and also in Delhi, mostly the non-resident Indians, the Indians who are living in US and Europe and England, they come in and they buy those things, which is the same case with us in US. Like here where I'm in Miami, Central American, South American come here and buy these apartments, and the developers keep on entertaining them. And some of them stay empty. They have all kinds of plans. Some want to get a green card, and they buy for the future for the children to go to college here. They all kind of scheme. Same thing in India. What Vihan is asking is that in big cities, there are big boxes, apartment and flats, or what we call condo here, coming all over. So does that high cost helps the poor or not help the poor? In other words, does the government, because in US, we are also very focused to making sure we built all these things, because the developer have to stay busy and create employment. People have different reasons, but sometimes it does not hurt. It does hurt, excuse me. Sometimes it does hurt to the middle class and more low middle class, like policemen, teachers, with average salary in the US. So Vihan is asking, is the same thing happening like in India, where the non-resident Indian putting money there, all those apartments, housing coming in for them to retire or to make an investment? How does that play?
Yeah. So, yeah, in a way, actually, what is happening are people, NRIs and all people sitting, they are investing, and especially in South Kerala and all. So, and having say 2-3 homes, they are investing in real estate, speculation. Over time, they will sell and maybe a retirement home. And so it's like, so the problem is that it's not a problem actually. It gives employment to the poor, because when the developers are making, it's the construction worker getting the house, getting the job. The developers, which is almost like 20% in any city, they are focusing on high income groups because they are looking for a very high IRR, internal rate of return. And so for them, selling it to the rich and to the high income group is what they're looking for. Anyways, the developers are not making for the middle income group, which is the teachers or like the like kind of people who middle income group. They're always like targeting because they have invested so much, they want that return to happen. So in a way, poor is anyways in an unplanned areas, and they're making their own ways out. And for the rich, the developers, the private law developers who are investing huge, look for high income group, which they are getting NRIs as one of their clients, or maybe the big businessmen of India as their clients. So anyways, the middle income group is actually most of the time left without government subsidy, without any good kind of plan. Initially, the housing boards, the development were actually were putting layouts for the middle income group, but now it's not happening. So somewhere then unplanned becomes as one of the option for the MIG also.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. So there are positive and negatives, just like we have in the US in overly crowded condo market and all that sort of thing. So I have another question. Did you see many people left Delhi going back to the villages during the COVID, which we saw that all over the TV. So Anne asked the question, so I think it's a very interesting question. Did some of those slums got demolished and they end up building something else? Or the process was so quick from 2020 to 2022, people came back, 23 came back and came back to their settlement. What was the scene? Were they destroyed, demolished, or were they just came back and take over their settlements?
So the majority of the people who shifted or went back to their villages were on rent, were tenants. They were not the owners. So the owners were still there in the squatters, in the settlements, and in the urban villages and the unauthorized colonies. The owners, so there's no chance of demolition at all. It's just that the rental income of the owners and the landlords reduced to such an extent that they were almost on the verge of starving. Like there is no tenant because that was only the source of income for them. And so we did the case studies and they were like, Ki, abhi to, we have nothing in our hands. Now, once this COVID went and then the people started returning back, now their rental income has started increasing. So now they have a source of income from the tenants.
So I will ask you, this is going to be last question before we close, final question, and that is the poverty issue is all over the world globally. You know, like I said, in the US, we have a poverty rate of 11.6%, and India is coming down substantially as economic development happened for the last, especially 20, 30 years. So is the urban planning process helps to reduce the poverty, which means to think about these, the earlier somebody raised the question about building apartments and all that for the NRI, or building for the rich developer coming from South America in our situation, or in California, other places. Does that help the urban planning process, how the master plan should be designed to reduce the poverty? Because the final question is really, you know, how do we reduce the poverty everywhere in the rich countries and also so-called upcoming countries, you know? So I just want to see your opinion in terms of urban planning process, you know, master plan, zoning, and all the things that you have talked about so eloquently. Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, the whole intention with this new master plan of Delhi, if I say 2041 coming up very soon, there the intention is to have such policies that it's pro development. So like we have now rental housing as the component, public rental housing to come up, not just a private where the people are tenants are at the wish of the landlords, but public rental housing to come up. So in a way, the government is addressing through the master plan very much and mixed land use to have job opportunities for the people where they are living. So few things are there within the plan that to reduce poverty. Yeah, government is very pro with the new master plan.
Right. But the urban planning process helps to reduce the poverty, would you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we have to be very mindful of that, because, you know, we have a poverty of pockets in US, you know, among all kinds of communities. And when the urban planners start thinking about all these things, they have to make them as the central focus of those people. Well, thank you so much. And I bring it back to Laila. I hope I didn't go over time. It's 10:59. Okay, sounds good.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Sawhney, for leading this really interesting discussion today. And thank you very much, Dr. Gupta, for providing some insight into the issue of informal settlements in Delhi. And I thank you for taking the time to speak with the India Center at UCF. And thank you also to the audience for tuning in today and participating. We hope to see you at our next India Center event this coming Monday. If you're local, we will be hosting the Consul General of India from Atlanta. He'll be on campus this coming Monday. And in 1 week, next Wednesday, we will be hosting a webinar on Garden as Universe. So I hope to see you at future India Center events. Thank you.
Laila, this is recorded, right? So
yes, it will be recorded and available on the India Center website.
The one we did today is recorded, right?
Yes, I will share that. Thank you all.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Kristen. Nice meeting you.
Okay.
Dr.
Thank
Ruchita,
you,
thank
sir.
you. See you soon
Thank you,
next
sir.
year. I'll see
Yeah.
you again. Thank
Welcome
you.
to India, sir. Please,
Yes.
whenever come next, let's
Yes,
meet.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you.
Yeah. Say my hi to Dr. Rao
Yeah.
and Jeet Gupta. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Yes. Good night. Yes.